And we're live. Woohoo! So, four big ideas for living with a fear of failure. Now, maybe you're not familiar with the, the fear of failure, but let me explain what it means for me and how this may be showing it up for you. I'm going to be telling you a story. It's my story of the fear of failure. Because it's something that I was living with for such a long time and wasn't even aware of it. So I'm going to share my experience, and I'm curious to see if you can relate to this and if this fear is showing up in some way in your life. So the fear of failure, the idea is, we're not good enough. We're simply not good enough. And because we're not good enough, we're going to fail. And failure means that things aren't good. It means that we're simply not good enough. It's a really painful, really sort of deep and quite painful fear. So we have lots of fears, but fear of failure is really a bad one. So my experience of fear of failure, year 10. So I just started sort of GCSEs in secondary school. And up until then, I was always sort of like group three consistently. So, sort of average sort of kid, but always did well. I always tried my best up until year 10 when I got moved down. So I got moved down a set, so to speak, and it was because of science. And to this day, I do not like science. This is probably why. But I had a science teacher. And to be fair, that year I was sort of mucking about and I got moved down as a result of this. And this was the first year that I'd been, not in this third set. And I was absolutely devastated. I was really, really upset. I was really, really frustrated that I could be moved down. And after this, I created this strategy in my head, subconsciously. This wasn't a conscious decision at all, but I created this subconscious coping mechanism to avoid that future pain, this future frustration, this future disappointment. So what I did was just get by in third gear. So if you imagine, 5 gears, 5 gear is giving 100%, trying your best. Third gear is sort of, in the middle. And I was doing this. I was living just doing the bare minimum, doing enough to succeed. And the coping mechanism was perfect. It worked really, really well, because if I succeeded in third gear, then great, I got the result. If I didn't, and here's where it gets really interesting, if I didn't succeed, that was okay, because I wasn't trying my best. If I was in fifth gear, if I was trying my best and still failed, that would really, really hurt. But if I was, cruising in third gear, if I wasn't trying my best and still failed, it didn't matter, because I could justify to myself that, well, maybe I'd do better. And it's a really, really perfect mechanism. And hi, Ruben, I can see Ruben's watching. It's crazy, because I had a conversation the other day with a client, and we had the same thing. We were talking about the fear of failure. We were talking about this fear of just not being good enough. And she recognized through me sharing her my story that she was doing the same thing. Not trying our best, because if we try our best and we fail, that's painful. But if we do just enough, Nathan, Big Nathan, how you doing, man? If we do just enough and we still don't succeed, that's okay. We can justify it to ourselves. Now, I think fear of failure is something that we're all terrified of. I think we all have similar experiences to what I've just shared. We all sort of go through life, and it's normally childhood, as cliche as it is normally childhood that we have this, guten Tag, we have this experience that just knocks our confidence, which can really affect us, and it affects us into sort of adult life. So I want to sort of introduce, what does it say? Congratulations, this is your most commented on live video yet. Woo! See, that fear of failure is just gone now. Got that. Anyway, back to this. I think this fear of failure affects so many people. It shows up in so many different ways. But I want to share 4 big ideas, just 4 things to consider if you recognize that you too have this fear of failure. So the first one is realizing that there's a cost. So of course, there's a cost of trying your best and not being good enough, and there's failure. But we need to consider the cost of not taking action. And a great way to do this is to imagine getting to the end of your life. So getting to old age, imagine your deathbed, and imagine not trying your best. Imagine just cruising in third gear. Imagine all those dreams, all those goals that you want to create didn't happen because of this fear of failure. Because the mind's very, very good, and it sort of spotlights the potential pain, it spotlights the potential failure. But we need to consciously look at, well, what's the reward? What if I don't fail? What if I do achieve that? Just to balance it out. So the first step is to consider, what's the cost of not giving 100%? What's the cost of not going up into fifth gear and trying my best? The second tip, or the second big idea, I had a coaching call last week, as I said, and I was talking to my client, and we did an exercise. And this is an exercise which sounds a little bit woo-woo. When I first did it for myself, I thought, this is a little bit, too spiritual. But it really works. So whenever you've got a fear, we have to understand that fear comes from the mind. It's created by the mind. Write that down. So capture what that fear says. And what you do is you say, my mind says, and then you go to your heart and you answer with what the heart will say. So I'll give you my client's example. I won't share her name, but she said, my mind says, what if I'm not good enough? So it captures that fear. And I said, what does your heart say to that? And interestingly, out of nowhere, this answer popped up, and she said, my heart says I can achieve anything I put my mind to. And if you listen to the language of that, you can achieve anything you put your mind to. So the heart has absolute faith that you can get to where you want, or my client can get to where she wants. It's a matter of just getting the mind on board. Anything you set your mind to. Such an interesting answer. But try this yourself, capture those fears, and then say, well, my mind says this, what does my heart say? And just listen to those answers, that wisdom that pops up. Really, really interesting exercise. So that's the second big idea, is to listen to your heart more than your mind. Because the mind is always going to project worst case scenario. It's always going to give us those fears. But if you listen to the heart, just see what answers pop up. The third one, the third big idea for living with fear of failure. And I'll say why I said living with fear of failure, not overcoming. Because overcoming fear of failure is just almost in resistance to the fact that it's there. It's not accepting that it's there. It's suggesting that it's a real big negative. You can live with fear of failure and still succeed. In exactly the same way that you can live with anxiety and still succeed. You can live with lack of confidence or a confidence issue and still succeed. So instead of trying to overcome these obstacles, just embracing them, living with them, because we can still get to where we want to be and still have these issues here. So that's just a bit of explanation about why I said living instead of overcoming fear of failure. But the third one is to have some fun. So your mind says, I don't think I'm good enough. What if I fail? Turn that into a challenge. Go directly against that fear and turn your goal, or whatever it is you want to achieve, whatever it is you want to create, turn it into a project. Okay? Every day, take some action and almost become a bit of a scientist. Treat this as a hypothesis. Am I good enough? It doesn't have to be this real defining, negative, heavy experience. Turn it into some fun. Take some actions. Turn it into a bit of a game, and just see if you are good enough. And you'll surprise yourself, because we've all got this creativity, but almost be like a child again. Be like a scientist. Just put it out there. Take some actions, and you'll surprise yourself. But when we stay stuck, when we let this fear of failure, not even let us get out the door, well, of course, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's going to be true. But go against that. Take some actions, but create a real sense of fun and turn it into a challenge, turn it into a project, and just get out there and do something. The fourth one is almost to spin this idea of fear of failure as being something quite negative and turning it into a positive. So how would it be different for you if you were to not experience a fear of failure, but as a desire for failure? So instead of a fear of failure, what if you desired failure? Because if you think about it, isn't it true that every time we fail, we learn? Every time we fail, we learn. You know, Thomas Edison, he said, I haven't failed. I found 10,000 ways not to do something. Because failures are the portal to success. Every time we fail, we learn something. Whether we learn something about ourselves, we learn a strength, we learn a weakness, or maybe we learn just one way of not doing something, one way of not getting to where we want to be. So what if you were to view your failures of actually a sign that things were going right, and seeing those as just the stepping stones to eventually get to where you want to be? So that's the fourth big idea of just flipping that fear of failure and turning it into a desire for failure, and just seeing how that affects how you show up. Now, I'd love to hear your ideas on this. It's a bit of a spontaneous video, but just wanted to jump on. Leave me your comments, or you can send me a private message, either to my personal page or the Will Elward Orange Box, just sharing your sort of insights, or sharing any ideas that you think are interesting, or whether you can relate to my story, because I know that I'm not alone. I see this when I chat to people. We've all got this fear of failure, which is very slippery, it's very cunning, and it will show up in different ways. But for me, it was, just not allowing myself to step into that fifth gear, not allowing myself to really go for it. So thanks for watching. We're going to end for now, but speak to you very soon. Take care.